He was quite unfit from a lifetime of soft living for hard manual labor, and the awful realization broke over him that he was completely inadequate for this new and terrible situation, unable to face life as it now faced him. The thought of his wife and children left utterly alone and penniless withheld him from committing suicide at once. But the realization that he himself was unable to do anything for them, even if he remained with them, was so terrible that he felt he could not bear it. He had been suddenly stripped of everything in which he had trusted, and now found himself so despicably incompetent and inadequate that it seemed a disgrace to remain alive. His wife's superiority was equally terrified by the discovery of her own unfitness to face life and its demands when deprived of all the service and ease and pleasures with which wealth had supplied her. Her reactions, however, differed from those of her husband. Perhaps it was the inner decision which she had made a few days ago to continue to love grace and glory because of the passionate longing in her heart which she had at last admitted to herself, to know the shepherd that made her at this time when her whole life lay in ruins about her. Think with a desperate, almost despairing hope of appealing to the shepherd for help, when at last her half crazed husband could be brought to listen to her, and she made the suggestion that in their utter loss of all things that should at last turn to the one they had so long disdained and rejected. Pride's reaction was one of agonized horror and shame. How can we, he almost shrieked at his wife, how can we go crawling and groveling to him now that we are ruined and absolutely destitute? How can we implore his help after scorning him all these years when we were wealthy and secure? We can at least save ourselves that last complete humiliation of groveling before him as beggars pleading for a pittance, and flung us out of pity, and likely being despised and turned away. But we are beggars, said superiority in a trembling voice, and it is not better to face the fact, pride, and to acknowledge ourselves to be what we really are, unless the shepherd will accept us and teach us some kind of useful work, however menial. I don't see what other hopes there is for us. Pride groaned in anguish. There is nothing I can do. For weeks and weeks I have thought about it and sought for some course of action to follow should this overwhelming catastrophe come upon us. But there is no solution, and absolutely none. There is no way out but for me to die. Perhaps the shepherd would help you then, but he will have nothing to do with me, for I have been his worst enemy all these years. Pride, said a quiet, commanding voice. Pride, are you in superiority willing to listen to me at last? Looking up in the midst of their anguish and ruin, husband and wife then saw the shepherd himself standing in the room beside them. His face was stern and his voice was stern, but there was a note of compassion and mercy in it also. Both trembled in his presence and sank down at his feet, bereft of strength, yet in the depths of their hearts both felt an indescribable sense of relief and comfort. Pride and superiority, went on the quiet, commanding voice. All your lives you have been exactly what your name suggests, proud and superior toward others. But wherein did your fancied superiority consist? In the fact that you possessed wealth and possessions and privileges which others did not. Never once would you look at yourselves as you really were. Now that the wealth and possessions which gave you this superior attitude have been taken from you, wherein lies your superiority? On what can you pride yourselves now? Are you ready to at last to learn of me, who am meek and lowly in heart, and to find rest to your souls? For humility is simply to see yourselves as you really are, and meekness is to admit the truth about yourselves and to act accordingly. The two bowed their heads before him and were at first speechless. Then Pride muttered with almost a sob, "You are right, sir. It is all true. But how can I come to you now, now asking for your help after proudly rejecting you all these years?" "Are you still a fool, Pride?" asked the shepherd. "It was folly to reject me with all the years when you possessed wealth and imagined that you could manage without me. Now that you know your utter helplessness and that in yourself you possess nothing, cannot you see that it would be sheer madness to go on rejecting me? Oh, foolish man, do you not realize that this world and this earthly life are so arranged that sooner or later every single human soul must realize he is nothing but is absolutely dependent upon me? If you would not learn this truth while you had temporal possessions, do you not see that there was only one thing love could do to make you understand the truth, namely, take those possessions from you, leaving you naked and empty and stripped and exposed to the realization of your own true position? It is love, pride, and superiority, love himself, who has brought this so called ruin upon you. It is ruin for love to topple over and cast down every false screen you had erected to hide the truth from yourselves. Love has but arranged it so that you must face the truth at last. See yourselves as you really are, not as you have painted yourselves in your own blind imagination. Are you therefore still going to reject my help and grace on the ground that you now see how unworthy you are to seek it? Will you be a madman, Pride, or will you humble yourself so that at last I may make you what I want you to be? Sir, said Pride tremblingly, sir, forgive me if I ask it, but can you really do anything with one so utterly helpless and despicable as I am? I can make you what I planned that you should be when I created you. If you will be meek and lowly of heart and learn of me, I will teach you and show you how to use for my glory all the benefits and advantages and privileges which you have enjoyed. But you must be willing to begin at the very beginning with nothing at all, willing to take from my hand this loss of all on which you have counted in life, and to accept instead that which you have despised, a low position and poverty and meanness in the eyes of the world. You must learn a new standard of values and to adapt your desires to that which I choose for you. It is a hard saying, Pride, but this is the truth which you have refused to face up to all your life. There was silence in the room when he had finished speaking. The man who had for so long hated and resisted the Lord of Love, who had first been crippled through his own resistance and then ruined through continued resistance, and the woman who, like herself, had refused to see herself as she really was, sat there in silence, debating whether they would accept the truth about themselves or reject it. Then superiority rose, and going to her husband, took his hand and said in a trembling voice, "This is the great opportunity of our lives. We have been fools. Shall we cease to be fools from this day onward? We have lost all but our own selves. How blessed to lose ourselves also, that we may find the life we were meant to live." He says, He will make us meek and lowly of heart, like Himself. I am sick to death of being superior. Are you not sick of being proud? Then her husband rose to his feet too, and they went and knelt before the shepherd and said, "Sir, we are nothing. We are miserable beggars, unworthy to ask your aid. but we are your slaves from henceforth and forever. The shepherd said with infinite loving kindness and love, my slaves, meekness and lowliness of heart, learn of me, and ye shall find rest unto your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Well, amen. May this chapter that has now finally been finished be a blessing unto all of you in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.